A couple weeks ago, I headed up to the Grand Tetons to bum around and camp in my 4Runner for a couple days. I was headed up to Bend for a work trip, but wanted to take an extra couple days to shoot some film while I was in such beautiful locations. With some new Cinestill alternatives and film burning a hole in my pocket, I headed up to Cannon Beach to test out and see if any of these would be worth it for you guys. We'll chat about each film individually at the end of the video, a Reflx Lab roll, a Mr. Negative roll, and then a roll of Shanghai film. So make sure you stick around for that. Also, it's worth noting that in the rush of trying to get good photos during good light, I totally spaced out on the fact that I was shooting tungsten balanced film in daylight, which is generally not a good idea as it'll throw the white balance off quite substantially. But thankfully, with some meticulous scanning from Midwest Film Lab and some tweaks to white balance, we were able to save a lot of the photos. Enough yapping, let's check out the film. From here, I headed back to the 4Runner and drove up to one of the state parks that overlooks Cannon Beach to get a different vantage point of the waning light on the beach. Some of the photos, because it was a tungsten film and with the pastel colors of the sunset, they got pretty wonky and out there, especially with people's skin tones in the photos. So in those cases, I just made them black and white. At this point, I kind of combed the beach for any final shots. Don't really think I ended up taking any, and made my way back to the 4Runner to call it a night. That next morning, I woke up nice and early, again walking the beach, but this time with a much different vibe going on. Much more barren with much less people. In the moment, I was disappointed there was no sunrise, but in hindsight, I think these conditions were honestly more interesting. From here, I packed up and headed north into Washington to check out some of their beaches. After seeing the majority of this beach, I drove one last time to another one about 15 miles south.
Alright, so the sun is currently setting. I have a composition that I actually really like, but I'm just waiting for the sun to be perfect. There's some clouds over top that are getting some nice golden pink tones on them, sitting above this nice island here, with some good stuff in the foreground kind of pointing, leading to it. So I'm hoping patience is the virtue here, and hopefully within the next couple minutes we'll get a shot that is much better than the initial test one. So we shall see.
From here, I hiked back up the trail to my Forerunner, which was only about a mile or two away, and headed back into one of the small coastal towns to stealth camp in the Forerunner. That next morning, I was awoken by a rooster, which felt like a telltale sign to get up and skedaddle before a local came and kicked me out. At this point, I charted a course for North Cascades National Park, wanting to attempt one of the most epic hikes I would ever go on. But we'll save that for next week's video. Alright, so let's finally talk about the film. First is the Reflx Lab Tungsten film. Now keep in mind that again, this is meant to be shot in tungsten light, which we'll check out in a minute here, but otherwise, honestly, despite having its back against the wall and shot in the most difficult conditions for it, I think it looks pretty good still. With some more meticulous editing, I was able to get some really unique colors, albeit leaning a bit more purple in some, but they look good regardless. I think Reflx Lab has done a great job at creating some really quality film stocks that can truly rival Cinestill at this point. Especially in Asia, where Cinestill is significantly more expensive than Reflx Lab, it's a great alternative. Additionally, all the tungsten balanced interior shots I've seen on this film have looked great so far. And I'm excited to test out some of it on some interior portraits at some point. Previously, I took some photos of my buddy Johnny on Cinestill, and his darker complexion looks amazing on the tungsten film, which I found to be super interesting. Also, I shot some Reflx Lab medium format film a while ago and was impressed by the results, even though it was an early prototype roll. So yes, Reflx Lab is a great resource when it comes to these tungsten film stocks and re-rolled film stocks in general. Next, I shot the Mr. Negative tungsten based film outdoors in the sunlight, again, like an idiot. Again, thankfully with the help from Midwest Film Co. and myself, we were able to doctor these up to get them looking good still. Mr. Negative is based out of Australia, so they cater towards that corner of the world for sure. I'm thankful for both of these companies to help bring this type of film at an affordable rate to consumers in more remote locations than the US. That being said, I feel pretty similar to this as the Reflx Lab. Good quality, not too intensive grain. The colors, despite some hassle, look really good on most of the photos as well. From what I've seen from others using this in actual tungsten light, it looks really good too. I definitely wouldn't hesitate to scoop either of these up, as both of these brands have proven to have some really good quality stuff. And last but certainly not least, I ripped a handful of shots on the Shanghai 100 roll. This film was sent to me to test out, and while I think it handled the photos well, and even had some really good photos come out of it while I was up in the Cascades, I had one major gripe with it, but honestly, we'll save that for its own explanation in the next video from the road trip, which should be coming up either next week or the following, depending how the videos lay out. In that video, I made some crucial mistakes with that film that almost jeopardized that whole video and subsequently the photos, and basically that leg of the trip, which was 2 or 3 days. So you guys will want to make sure you're subscribed for that, as I think it's one of the best videos to date. Otherwise, you guys let me know down in the comments which photo from this leg of the trip was your favorite, and which film stock do you think was the best of these 3. Also, let me know down in the comments if you've shot any of these, or if you'd be willing to give them a shot in the future. Like I said earlier, depending on the market you're in, this could be a good alternative to Cinestill, which is known to be a lot more expensive outside of the US, so something to keep in mind. Otherwise, that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the last episode coming soon. And until the next one, stay safe, stay shooting. Adios.